I love that one. Get triggered by that shit, but my fridge is a mess.
My fridge.
I did start flossing though. Because of your poem.
Did you really? Did you really?
Motivational now.
Shit, a Palestinian poet asked me to do that? Fuck, that's the least I can do. We're going to have fun in the interview, man.
I did start flossing.
Very fucking triggering poem.
Welcome back. This is the Raza BIPOC Access Podcast. And I am your co-host, Mark, at Creative Logic. And we are here with
Spin El Poeta at One Mic Educators. And we are honored today to have a very special brother of mine. I've known him for years. He attended events we attended jointly at Rise, and then he came out to our La Raza virtual events and then in person. And, you know, Muhannad, brother, it's an honor for me to have you on. We needed to have a Palestinian voice for our podcast series. So it's the theme of it is, you know, artist development for the grassroots artist. And I just loved when I was connecting with you that you didn't give a damn about the entrepreneurial aspects of it. And I just told Mark, we got to have you on because your approach to poetry is just so different and it's so refreshing. And I would love it, brother, if you could please introduce yourself and let us know, you know, what poetry means to you and how you came into it and whatever is in your heart to share.
Thanks, brother. First of all, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me. And it's always a pleasure to hear from you anything, let alone praise of my approach to poetry. So my name is Muhannad, and I've been an immigrant and a settler in Canada for the past 24 years. And it's been a learning journey ever since I've come here. And before then, poetry has always been in my life, and I would say in an extent to the lives of many Arabs and maybe Palestinians in particular. It is an art form that is ancient and has a lot of history where we come from. Whether it was in school growing up, it was always poetry was the main form of Arabic art that's been taught and passed on for centuries as both a form of entertainment, a form of teaching, a form of carrying knowledge. And it was always natural. And even as an adult, if I tried to translate something as simple as Arabic pop music, it still carries a high level of poetry that is beautiful to try to imagine and interpret.
I love that you touched on this, brother, because I've noticed as I've gotten to know more Palestinian poets, there's always interpreting of like ancestors' poems that y'all tend to do. And I don't see that. I'm in a slam poetry competition, people are trying to win, everybody's just doing new things. And it's just so refreshing to see this respect for the elders and the ancestors. You know, in Latin America, we have like Pablo Neruda, you know, we have our own poets, Roque Dalton. And I feel like generationally there's been like a breach in our culture where we don't necessarily pay those respects the way that y'all do. So it's really beautiful for me to see it, you know, when you all do it. And you know, I wanted to ask you about your own poetry that you now create, you know, because I'm seeing you evolve and it's just been so incredible, man, to see what's coming forth. And yeah, talk a little bit about your own process to create based on your rich heritage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I were to start with the first poem I wrote, like it was 2005, and it was just some lines that seemed to rhyme, and it was about a woman that I liked, and I'm sure it was a good piece for the time, but it was more than anything about rhyme, trying to rhyme, and I thought that was cool, and it was more of an entertaining myself. And I think with time, poetry became an emotional outlet, whether I'm deeply grieving something that happened or deeply happy about something that happened. Translating poetry has always existed, even before I thought of it as a thing. I think, and you commented about this, I think it's hard for for us to not draw from our ancestors. There's just so much, like from my background, there's so much Palestinian and Arabic poetry out there. And a lot of times it just seems to be a loss if I didn't just spend a little bit of time pondering on it, or even memorizing it. Growing up, even just in school, when I grew up in between Saudi Arabia and Jordan. We learned that the way traditional Arab poets centuries ago, the way when they would be learning to become poets, their master poet would get them to memorize poetry from others, from other masters of poetry. And then they would get them to not write anything for about a month or two. And then after that, tell them, okay, now you can write your own stuff. After having memorized and internalized the works of other greats. So I think to a lesser extent, that's how I see it. Taking time to read poetry, especially Palestinian poetry. And my grandfather himself, who's still alive, he's 92 years old. And he is a published poet. He's got 20 books. And he even has 2 books where he tried to catalog the Palestinian poets, the ones that he knew of as best as he could, and put a little bit of biography and a sample from each poet. And that's a huge source of inspiration. I guess what I'm trying to say is there's just so much out there, and it would be a disservice to ourselves first as poets to not talk about.
I appreciate that. And before we continue, because you did mention your grandfather, if you could please, brother, explain the meaning of the kufiya around your shoulders to the audience. You know, they might not see it, or, you know, Fox News is out here demonizing everything, but please let us know what it means to you and the history of it.
Yeah, I mean, the kufiya, obviously, now it's been popularized. This is a red and white kufiya. It belongs to my other grandfather who passed away over a decade ago. And it's the same traditional patterns. This one is not the more popular black and white one. It's a red and white one. And it has the fishnet pattern in the middle, which as Palestinians and Arabs who lived by the sea, it was a very common source of income and livelihood, and also symbolic of just destiny and not being in control of anything. You also have the olive tree leaves as the other symbol. The olive tree, or the olive branches, is just a symbol of being rooted in the land of Palestine. The straight lines are the symbols of the trade routes that pass through the region, Palestine and Jordan and Lebanon and Syria and Iraq, which was also huge for the people of the Levant. This one is quite meaningful for me because it did belong to my father's father. And then my father had it for a while, and now it's with me. So it definitely has a lot of sentimental value.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. I had seen a video about the meaning, but it's just so beautiful to hear it, you know, and especially knowing it's something inherited from your grandfather. Tell us, for you, like, the role of poetry in your life and how it serves as an emotional outlet for you.
Yeah. I mean, poetry as art itself, just the ability to express and create something beautiful. You can take something that is a negative emotion and finally wrap it up and be able to package it and be able to sit with it after the fact. I recall sometimes, whether it's a heartbreak or even in the last 10 months, just looking back at the tragedy of what's going on in Raza. just being able to summarize your emotions in a beautiful arrangements of words. I think just, at least for me on a personal level, gives me a little bit of peace. So that was part of the emotional outlet, to be able to grieve, to be able to process, and to be able to create something beautiful that I can share with others, or not, or just keep it to myself in other cases. And obviously sometimes it's, for me, also a form of celebration. If there's someone I recently met and I'm just marveling at their beauty, I can put that in a piece of art and be able to present that as a gift. Ultimately, for me, it is an emotional outlet. Recently, I think as I started to read more, I think that there was a lot of us have gone through some form of awakening in the last 10 months, if they're moved by what's going on in Gaza. And that led me down the path of learning more about just how the media works and how propaganda works. And a lot of what I learned, I thought was just very powerful. And myself and my friend Tally as well, we worked on a piece together about the power of propaganda and how it affected people across generations. And we tried to put that in a poem.
Phenomenal poem, by the way.
Yeah.
Thanks to you both for that.
Yeah. Thank you. So I think that's the other piece, to be able to, I don't know, like when you create something beautiful, maybe you'll be able to share it and somebody else can be moved by it. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you before we turn it over to Mark. You were at our event in Six Nations when we gifted the kofiyas to the Indigenous land defenders, artists, the youth. It's emotional for me to bring it up. At the time, I was so just executing that I didn't stop to think of the magnitude of it.
Yeah.
You know, Nora from City Soap, shout out to Nora, explained the meaning just as you did so eloquently, and then gifted, these badass land defenders, youth. They were all excited to receive the kofiyas. What did it mean for you as a Palestinian to be there, brother?
It was definitely special. Anytime just seeing the support and how the Indigenous community have stood up, seeing them at the forefront of every rally and every protest, standing with so much pride, carrying centuries of tradition, and how, despite the genocide, that the Indigenous community here on Turtle Island, they're still standing tall, standing with pride, carrying their tradition, and then how they're standing for us. So that's definitely moving and touching. We all see ourselves through the Palestinian and Indigenous cause.
It was important for me to organize that open mic that way because all the land defense that has taken place, and they've reclaimed their land twice right now and counting. That Palestinian flag is waving proudly, man. No matter what shit they're disturbing or what the OPP's doing, that Palestinian flag's always there, brother. So I really appreciate you sharing that. The emotion just hit me. Reminding.
And one thing that came out of this is communities are getting together, standing for, communities are connecting based on values from different backgrounds. And there are many communities that have come to learn and have learned to become very close to, whether it's the Indigenous community or the activist Jewish community that's always at the forefront, or the Latina community, or from everywhere. And I think we all see ourselves as fighting the same fight. We're sharing the same values. We can empathize with each other's stories, and we can see beyond what used to divide us, stuff whether it's just to see that even the trans community and the homosexual community, they're the queer community, they're always showing up during this cause. I think it's just brought everyone together, knowing that there is a bigger issue here. There is we don't have to argue about these little things. There's a bigger war happening, and it's always been happening. It's just now on social media, for the first time ever, people are able to see it live streamed. Like, I'm sure, like, what happened in Iraq in early 2000s or the 1990s was just as bad. What's happened to the indigenous community over the past 500 years, just as bad. The impact of imperialism and colonization in Africa and what's happening now, just as bad. It's just, I think that's what can bring us together. Yeah. So it was definitely a special moment to see just the straight lineage from colonization on Turtle Island to colonization in Palestine.
And can you speak a bit more about that, like exploring your study of history into like human, immigrant, indigenous, colonizer, and the planet's history, and influencing your poetry? Like, what are some of those specific aspects of history and of these atrocities, essentially, throughout our timeline that really impact your work the most?
Yeah. The more recently, more than anything, is just the extent of how, even like me and my close friends and some of my Palestinian friends, we talk about how it's almost that we grew up forgetting, or almost in a level of denial of how afraid we've been to be openly Palestinian.
Mm-hmm.
And in the most recent awakening, it taught us that, it was never really, our own history was never really taught to us. So it's something we had to pick up as adults, and some of us did and some of us didn't. The more recent exploration that I've been doing was just around the impact of propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and that piece that you read, This is Deja Vu, we titled it, just heavily explored. We explored different topics on how Zionism historically was started as an idea to expel Jews from Europe, as old as the Spanish Exposition, for example. How the two major political parties, irrespective of who gets elected, they're going to run the country like a business to dominate the planet. And here I'm talking specifically about the American politics, to dominate the planet, and how propaganda is used as a machine to manipulate the masses. There's a lot of history on how propaganda is always used, whether it's through any kind of authority. And I know religion is a beautiful thing, but there are many times where religion was used as a propaganda outlet, or the White House,
100%.
or whoever is sitting in the White House, or whoever is sitting within inside a mainstream media a news outlet. So that was more of the recent exploration of more geopolitical studies that I've been exposed to.
I think one thing that's been important for me in seeing the genocide in Gaza unfold is all the Jewish voices standing up, because they tell if you're anti-Zionist, you're anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
But my response to people is, if you're telling me that opposing the actions of the state of Israel is anti-Semitic, you're the anti-Semitic person, because there's Jewish rabbis that surrounded Congress demanding a ceasefire. There's countless thousands of actions by Jewish allies, even within Israel, that are opposed to it. And yes, there's people that are in favor of the colonization and the genocide, but you can't label one group of people or religion. And I appreciated you mentioning also the queer community and the trans community, because right now we're in a situation where humanity has to prevail. And whoever's on the side of humanity, that's what we got to rock with, man. We got to put everything else aside. I did skip over a question that I meant to ask you, that is your writing process. and I'm so intrigued to know what your writing process is like.
Yeah.
What does Muhannad do when he wants to create a
it's
poem?
definitely a work in progress. I think I'm trying to come up with a more structured way of writing. I think the default is when there's almost an overabundance of emotions inside of me. I'm overwhelmed by and moved emotionally and very deeply by a situation or a personal experience. Then I just know I need to make peace with it and sit down and write. Sometimes it's in the middle of the night, like as in wake up in the middle of the night, and these words are just processing me as opposed to me processing them, and then I need to get it out on paper. So that there's that is I think it's more about listening to all these emotions and trying to put words to them. There have been times where it was more of a structured way, and I think I have a particular music, some Palestinian instrumental music that I listen to by the Trio Gibran. There, 3 Palestinian brothers who compose their own music, and they come from a long line of musicians. And I just found their soft traditional music sort of helps me just sit down and create as well. So to answer your question, a lot of times it's the emotions processing me, but sometimes, which is what I'm trying to work on now, is just to give it space and time and put my music and just start writing.
When that poem starts writing itself in your brain, you got to drop everything.
That's right.
I've showed up late to work, because I had to get a poem out.
Yeah, I hear you. I've had that too as well, like where it's, whether it's at work or somewhere else, I take my notebook and I'm like, okay, this needs to come out now. And I remember there was an interview with Roger Waters, and he said the best, because he was asked about his writing process, and that resonated with me. And what he said was, it's almost like feeling pregnant, and this form of life needs to come out. So then he sits down and gives it its space. And even though that may sound absurd, for me that resonated, and I guess I felt sometimes I need to respect it and drop everything and let that happen.
Man, I'm so excited for this interview, and I got to shout out Mark for the prepping and the thoroughly thought out questions. We haven't asked these questions in previous, the writing process. I don't feel like
writing process. We did touch on that with Amoya Ray.
Yes, Amoya Ray. Shout out to Amoya Ray. It's beautiful though. It's beautiful to hear you. I think for me is the fact that you're just beginning your journey. And I remember when I was beginning, and I just wanted to write nonstop and everything. And then after a while, I kind of got over the hump of the professional artist thing. I just don't give a fuck. I just I went to the National Art Center in Ottawa for a competition, and I was wearing the kufiya, and I just did my thing. I didn't care, and before I would have been overthinking everything.
Fair enough.
What if I lose points because I got a kufiya on? I was like, fuck that. I'm wearing it, and I won. You know what I'm saying? It was like a message that needed to be said, and then my victory speech was like, arms embargo to Israel, dismantle the settlements, free Palestine every day, all day. Thank you. And I just walked off with my money. So I hope to see you get to that part of it. There's just a bunch of gunk in between.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add to the writing process.
Yes, please.
A lot of times, I actually find a lot of pleasure. Like writing poetry can feel tasking sometimes. Like you're trying to find the right words. But one practice that I find a lot of pleasure in that is not tasking is just translating poems and finding out more poems in Arabic, which is a language I'm privileged enough to understand, and then just sit down, internalize them, be inspired by them, and translate them. And I feel that's time not wasted. I'm always enriching myself and learning, and I know it would eventually make its way to inspire my own writing.
So I am curious, what do you see as to the future of your art? Like where would you like your art to get to? What's your dreams with your art?
Absolutely. I mean, I think especially right now in this moment in time in history, I feel I really want to attach to a project that has something to do with social justice in Palestine. I remember years ago there was a community center in Toronto called Beit Zatoun that, yeah, if you remember it, and it operated for 6 years or 6 or 7 years, and it was a place that hosted a lot of social justice events. A lot of it was around Palestine, but a lot of it was not. And it was where also a moment that was very important to me. I met people from different cultures who cared about Palestine, but also I got introduced to other important topics that it taught me to care about other important issues as well. So I just find I want to attach to a project similar that can enrich my curiosity and other people's curiosity, and I think the art will follow that that activist work or that social work or that volunteer work. There are a few friends that we're talking about different things, but there's nothing concrete. As far as what do I see myself, I think the next little step, honestly, is just making it more of a practice for me, translate more, write more, and also study more how to write poetry more. I think a lot of it now, like I've gone inspired by certain poets, and then I've read other poets, and then I've gone inspired to change my style.
What poets inspired you?
Initially, it was a lot of structure, and I think that's the tradition coming from my grandfather himself. He's a very classical. He writes in a very classical Arabic poetry way, which is very structured, very metered, similar to a Shakespearean poet. And I think that's what I was trying to mimic. I can't say I ever got the structure as tight as what my grandfather or Shakespeare would do, but certainly I tried to focus more on the rhythm and the musicality of it. Then later I got introduced, like the one name that sticks to my mind was Charles Bukowski, who was completely, he actually resented or didn't like the structure in poetry, and his style was more on emotion and imagery. And I remember I read a lot of Charles Bukowski poems, and for a while I just completely stopped writing. And I was very moved by his style. And then that was a turning point in how I would write.
You did what the master poetry teachers,
I suppose. Yeah.
told you to do.
Yeah.
Now,
Sorry,
continue.
So I think I just want to, the next little thing is just make it more of a practice, sit down, give it its time. If I have a poem that's inspired, write it. If not, just sit down and translate. Yeah, that's what I see myself doing.
And we're going to launch our, I forget what is Shut Up and Write. Well, not Shut Up and Write is taken, just write it out. Whatever it is, we're going to launch it. We're going to do 2 virtual, 2 in person. And within the One Mic Educator 7.0 group that you're a part of, we are going to produce an immigrant indigenous friendship team poem. And so I did this before, but I didn't have indigenous poets or Palestinian poets. It was an amazing poem, and it got a lot of support and a lot of love. So I'm really excited to create this new team piece. How are you feeling about it, or what are your preliminary thoughts or curiosities?
I think these initiatives are wonderful, man. Like I'm always happy to take part and support. I love the write it out or initiative. I like the idea of just making it simple. Every week, same time, same place. I think that's the way to do it. You commit and you keep it simple.
Yeah, I've been complicating my life for too long, man.
Sure.
I like your approach. Now I know you got some poems to share with us today, and you know the one I want to hear first. But free will, whatever you wish to share. But yeah, man, I want to turn it over if you wanted to share some pieces.
All right. So I chose 2 poems for today. The first one is called Dear Activist, and the other one, which I think you also heard, maybe you haven't heard it in a while, it's called Blanket. So we'll start with Dear Activist. I wrote this in November of last year.
Wow, just a month into
Yeah.
this idea.
Dear Activist, please clean your fridge and your bathroom and kitchen, fold the laundry, floss your teeth. The bare minimum of self-care is not the equivalent of apathy. Get your sleep, eat wholesome, drink clean water. Grief is no fuel for hour-long march. Dear activist, as much as you will walk and write and chant, you may dance in this revolution. Dear activist, as much as we may be silenced, suppressed, or preferably unheard, you may sing in this revolution. Dear activist, as much as we suffocate, as natural as it is for you to grieve, you may breathe. Dear activist, please breathe. On behalf of all of us, take your deepest breath, even if we couldn't. Dear activist, with all the weight of this injustice and all the failings of the collectives, all we got is to carry. So take breaks and you may fill your cup before you pour your heart out one more time, because we need you on this never-ending journey. This planet needs you. Our memory needs you. Our stories and faces and our body parts, homes and markets need you. Planting a seed of hope in fertile soil, sun and clean water after the rubble and ashes is no waste. It is all we have left. You, dear activist.
Oof. Brother, I love that poem. It's also highly triggering because my fridge was a mess the first time I heard it. And I was like, I need to start flossing. This guy's absolutely right. So I did I did start flossing because of your poet. I appreciated the aspect of the self-care, and we're in a capitalist society in North America. Everyone's rushing. Everyone always has something to do. But your people are going through the worst of it all. Why was it important for you to create this for the activists and the focus on the self-care?
To be honest, it is part of the awakening as I realized this is a never-ending journey. We can say this didn't start in October 2023, and that could mean different things. One of them is this also didn't start in Palestine. It didn't start in 1948. It didn't start in 1917 with World War I. It started way before. There's no good reason why I am ignorant of the troubles that the Indigenous community have been going through in the last 500 years here, or the troubles in other places, and it's a never-ending journey. And to steal from a commentator that I follow, her name is Caitlin Johnstone. On this never-ending journey, you have to protect yourself. You care for yourself also to protect the people you love from your own trauma. That's the only way. That's the only way to say, fuck you to dystopia. You care for yourself and you carry on, right? You carry on with a smile. You can't just let the grief take you down.
I want to thank you, brother, as someone that has let the grief take me down and just working myself to the ground. That poem, I did start flossing because of it, but it just reminded me to self-care in general, because what good am I if I'm broken down?
Yeah.
Not only about that self-care aspect, but just in terms of, do you feel that the narrative kind of continue to be pushed and consistently be rehashed because many people don't understand history? And it's kind of like a first time that it's happening for them. So they don't actually realize this isn't a new thought that I have. This is an old thought that doesn't work for a variety of reasons, which we've already seen. And do you think almost that it is that, or do you think there's just almost like a narcissism and an evil to people?
I mean, absolutely. I think the fact that we don't know is a large part of why it keeps happening. But I think what is more sinister than that is, like, I remember 2 years ago, one of the friends I had was just becoming to know. She's Indigenous, and I was telling her, as Palestinian, this was around the time when bodies of children were starting to get uncovered, and that's
Residential schools.
in the residential school. And I was telling her, I feel a huge sense of shame being Palestinian, always carried my own Indigenous story, that I'm ignorant of what's happened to the Indigenous community here. And with a comforting voice, she looked me straight in the eyes and she said, they don't want you to know.
Mm-hmm.
And just to feel that generosity, right? But I think that's the sinister part. There's a huge machine that's always blinding people and telling us a different story to try to manipulate us and pin us against each other. So yes, I do agree. Not knowing the history keeps us in this loop. But I also think part of it is when you grow up in a marginalized community, it's comforting to stay in denial and not. Yeah, absolutely. Ignorance is bliss. Comforting to stay in denial. It's comforting not to learn your own history even, and just worry about that job or not stick out in the crowd, assimilate, work for the man, and that's all okay. But yeah, I think it does start with awareness of what's going on, awareness of the intensive psychological manipulation and the history. Go ahead.
I was going to say that I wanted to have you speak a bit about that, and if that was almost a journey for you, or if that's something that was kind of in the core of your heart, because many people feel as though their trauma is more important than somebody else's trauma.
Right.
And I think a lot of the time that is what blocks us from hearing, understanding others, and making it relatable to recognize that our situation and other situations are common so that we can combat essentially the negative situation that's occurring to so many people. Like, what was that moment? What was that defining, if you can remember, defining moment, or maybe you were just always like that from you can remember, but at what point did you kind of realize that, like, your problems are just as important as my problems, and your history essentially just as important as my history? And by doing that, it sounds like you've connected with people, recognized that commonness in their experience and their history, not history, but their ancestral experience, which is common to yours.
Absolutely. I think there were many moments on that journey that we're defining. I think the biggest for me, the biggest leaps, to be honest, was actually being curious about the Jewish community, because it is unfortunate that in the name of Judaism, the Zionist project has committed many atrocities, and that can blind people from everywhere, from the Palestinian community and from the Jewish community. And I don't like speaking on behalf of my Jewish friends, but I got to learn a lot. I think it started as a curiosity. How can another human being, how can this story be true, that I know nothing about this other human being? And what if I was born Jewish? What would that experience be? And I mentioned Beit Zitun earlier, and that's when I first encountered and was able to have meaningful conversations and meaningful connections with people who were Jewish. And it was fortunate that I mean, in that space, I met a lot of Jewish people who either were very much well aware of the situation, pro-Palestinian, or some people who were just on the beginning of their journey, and they're still trying to weigh things out. And which is why now today, I can sit down in gatherings of where and it started out like my Jewish friends have given me a lot of inspiration. Sometimes in a way where they'll bolster my core beliefs about, I guess, about the level of support for certain aspects of the resistance, but also sometimes I hear about their stories about how they have a brother or a sister or an uncle or a father who might be hugely Zionist, but lately they started to listen to a podcast or read a book, and they're started to change their minds. And one huge thing that I'm learning is to learn about the Jewish trauma. I actually think it's unfortunate. We grew up in a world where you can't grieve trauma because, first and foremost, a traumatic incident is used to make a point. The Holocaust is used to make a point. Hostages are used to make a point. Palestinian casualties are used to make a point. And then grieving trauma is only for the people who are heavily involved. Everybody else is watching and trying to make a political point. But there's nothing wrong for me to learn about the Holocaust, even though growing up, it was always used to justify the creation of the State of Israel, which to me is a traumatic historical experience. But I think to come to learn that there were people who, throughout this trauma, right, they learned to make art and have poetry, like we were to heal through it, and then to make friends and stand shoulder to shoulder with people from the Jewish community for what's right, for justice. I think these were many defining moments. So it started out like the last 10 months were huge, just working together with people from different communities, but especially the Jewish community. But even way before then, just a lot of the books that I was reading were written by Jewish authors, whether it's Noam Chomsky or Professor Finkelstein or whoever. So I think that curiosity about this other, that growing up in the Arab world, or which we didn't learn, but then to see that they're just coming out, has encouraged me to learn about their traumatic experience and then expand that to beyond the Palestinian issue.
And to me, that's the danger of calling anti-Zionism anti-Semitic, because it's two different things. Joe Biden himself said that you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. So then how the fuck is being anti-Zionist anti-Semitic, And I actually had a beautiful experience at the OG 500 in Ottawa. There was a Jewish sister, Dahlia, and she did a beautiful poem about being proud of her heritage, And you have to put the politics aside and just hear the humanity in the poem. Following her, I did my Made in Canada poem, which calls for the boycott, divestment, sanctions. And I felt awkward getting backstage afterwards because it wasn't intentional. It was just what I had in the lineup. I wanted to win. And so when I got back, she congratulated me for the poem. And I think that was my favorite moment out of everything because I wasn't expecting that. Not that I was passing judgment, but I said what I said, and the fact that she actually thanked me for it, like that's the humanity that we need to build. And that's the humanity that they're so desperately trying to rip away from us.
Absolutely.
Now, before I forget, brother, you do have another poem.
Sure.
Yeah, but you were going to say something.
I was going to say there is a healing power to sit. Like I've gone through many healing moments in the last few months, and I recognize it's a position of privilege. Just sitting across the table from people who are Jewish, and we would get into these talks, and I would say what I have to say. Like, for example, like, and I think it might offend, and they would tell me, no, you're absolutely right. Like, this makes 100% sense, right? And then we can hold that space for each other. And I think there is something healing about that. Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah.
You said you had another poet called Blanket.
Blanket. So this one is not political.
Oh, wow. I wasn't expecting it.
This is a poem after a breakup.
Mm.
Maybe I'll say the poem, then we'll talk about it first.
For sure.
Look, we made a blanket, sewn of the pieces of our broken hearts. A thread of madness. Unresolved childhood trauma shit patched up with patterns and words painting dreams. Garden leaves out of broken glass bottles. Look, we slept under our blanket. Two bodies fused at the fault lines of our sharp edges. Warmth found within the music of your sigh over my heartbeat. Peace from a world without. Look, our blanket is burning. Soaked my sweat and turned it to gasoline. Stole your breath and sparked it to flames. Our garden of fantasy is burning, brighter than anything we have ever seen. Look, soon it will be flying ash, fairy angels of soot and ember ascending from dusk to dawn. Look at all of this. Look at what was. Look at what could have. Look. And if you can't find it, know that it was. The moon saw it. The night saw it. The ceiling fan saw it. Bed sheets and pillows felt it. Carpet and night music all heard it. Tomatoes in our garden, basil and mint from our yard tasted it. I saw it. You saw it. Look. There is all of this nothing now, for me, to make a new blanket out of.
So I know that you had said earlier that you see yourself at a student level and you're exploring how you view like your artistic identity. But from watching you and hearing you speak and being able to perform publicly and perform in front of other people, what's the balance for you between feeling as a student of poetry, but then still sharing your work publicly?
That's a great question. I think it's something I'm still exploring. I guess maybe it's that self-doubt of am I accomplished enough as a poet? Maybe it's my way of continuing to write. I need to relieve that pressure off of my shoulders. I think I'm still having fun with all the poetry, to be honest. And I like just continuing to practice. I feel the act of practice is where the fun is.
I love it.
Yeah. And I don't mind being a student for a long time, to be honest. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
You're way beyond a student, brother. I've been to national slam poetry competitions where I heard trash. Like, you're fire.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, because I feel I have a lot to learn. I know that. Yeah. Whether it's the just codifying and understanding different styles of poetry and poetry writing, performing, making it a structured endeavor to write, not just wait for inspiration. Yeah.
And I think that I get what you mean. It's kind of like it's a constant learning journey. And there's never kind of a moment where there isn't an opportunity to be able to learn something new or to be able to expand on a perspective that you had before. But at the same time, like you have a polishness to your ability to deliver, your ability to put your thoughts together, et cetera. And it's like you said, it's just making sure that like it keeps you with the hunger to be creative and to learn, but it's not the inner critic essentially telling you that you can't.
Spot on. Yeah.
To you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, Mark's just phenomenal. Oh, So I know you don't want to hear nothing about the business side of poetry, and you're done with Instagram. So
Sure.
I was trying to send you memes, and I'm like,
Sure.
"Shit, that is that." Mark, I'm curious. Are there any other platforms you would suggest, and I don't know if you'd be open to it or not,
Sure.
Muhannad, where he could kind of promote his poetry without getting into the drag of like social media and bots and all this crap? Like,
Honestly, I think it just all comes down to what your goal is. So if you're looking to be a mass market, you're looking for a mass audience, you want hundreds of thousands of people, like there's certain places that you're always going to have to be to kind of grow to that audience number. But if you're looking for 1,000 true fans, where 1,000 people who spend $100 with you every year, which is less than $10 a month, that's $100,000 a year that you're generating in revenue. So it's not a small amount of money by any means, but it allows you to be more specific on what the type of person is that you're looking to interact with, and then just going into the places where those people congregate. So it's not necessarily needing to be on social media. It could be community events where like-minded people come. It could be on discussion boards. It could be community forums, as opposed to it being on the regular social media sites that people think of, like Instagram, TikTok, etc. There's Discord forums. There's Reddit forums. There's a lot of places where you can essentially connect with individuals, and that's really what the key is individuals who see value in what you're providing through your creative, not your creative pursuits, but the creative assets that you're creating,
Right.
and like your poems, etc. The key to me really is just creating that value for those people and not looking at having to essentially do the popular or consistently have your voice within the mix, but finding where those people congregate. And a lot of the times it is forums, it's local events, it's open mics. But at the end of the day, if your target is to have 1,000 people, growing to that 1,000 people at that spending amount, like that you could have a great artistic future. And even if that's not your main income, even as a side income, it's a beautiful side income to be able to have from your creative endeavors.
how do you think about that?
I think that's great. To be honest, I mean, at some point, I want to look at the practical aspects, but I think my motivation more is to create space for curiosity, especially people of different background. And I do think that's when social media will be absolutely valuable and instrumental. And again, I'm saying this not as I'm saying this, I guess, looking for feedback. What I thought about is looking at platforms like just SoundCloud, and I don't know much about Spotify or SoundCloud for that matter, and just recording things and putting them up, even if it's just translating poems and putting them up, and then seeing if there's other artists.
100%.
Yeah,
Because those are all just free ways for you to be able to test the audience.
sure.
And then be able to see what that feedback comes, if they see value in it, if they're interested in it, and then creating a way that you can essentially remarket to them. So whether it's you creating an email list and maybe you release a translated poem every month or every week, just something that essentially brings them back and gets them into a routine of receiving that thing from you of value. And the more that you grow that audience and you're able to document it, the more you're able to get feedback to see if what you're doing, if that's the case, like you want to see if it's going to resonate with your audience, you can get that feedback beforehand before kind of investing as much time into something. So I think the key really is to be able to have that audience, build that audience on that like-mindedness of people that essentially have the mindset that you're looking for within your fan base, and continue to grow on that, because like-minded people will draw in other like-minded people, and then it starts to create a community. And really what you're looking to do is create a community, because that community is what essentially helps to grow itself and becomes its own, almost, it markets itself, because people start to spread it with word of mouth, and then they start to have get-togethers and meetups where you're able to benefit from that and benefit from those interactions and have your art as a part of those interactions. Kind of like going to hip hop parties or old school parties. It's a lot of people with the same interests, the same audience that have been at a part of their journey where they had value in that same thing. And now, even now, you'll have people going to 90s parties or retros parties when it's 20, 30 years after that, because it's still a shared experience within that audience.
Dope. I'm glad we got something, on the business side of it. We're going to wrap up, brother. I wanted to just conclude with, two questions. One is, when we were planning with you had a bit of a nervousness, like, oh, I'm not established, whatever. You've proven your mettle, you're an amazing poet. What does it mean to you at this journey in your career to be on a podcast, to have an episode, to potentially inspire others that are in your same shoes where they're beginning, and they're having their own insecurities. What does it mean for you as Muhannad?
Yeah. I think on the personal, selfish level, first of all, it gets me to commit more to this art form because I know I love poetry. I know I love either poetry I am privileged enough to create or poetry I read or learn. And it's just another piece in continuing to be plugged into the community as well as committing myself more into the art. Now, if by any chance somebody else can resonate with them, that's fantastic. I mean, that's very rewarding to hear. I think that's what it means to me is continuing to prioritize this art form.
I feel it will resonate, brother, because this is the only episode we've had in the whole series where we had someone on your stage of the journey. And I'd like to know, to conclude, firstly, thank you for agreeing to this, to being here, brother. We brothers for life at this point, and you're educating me about poetry, in spite of whatever accolades, quote unquote, like, it's refreshing to have this energy of like, let me have fun, let me be a student. Like, we all need that, no matter where we're at. What advice would you have for others that are in your part of the journey where they're finding themselves, they have the curiosities, they're not sure? What advice would you have for them?
First of all, I appreciate all the kind words coming from you, man. It's always a pleasure. But honestly, I would say don't overcommit, undercommit, and just if you're enjoying the art form, show up to the scene, whatever poetry event you like or whatever your art form is, and break it down to little baby steps and do it at least once a week. For me, translating poems works, but even if it's just reading the poetry or reading the history, reading the form of fiction, because that's all effort-based. And then staying plugged into the performance scene or the poetry scene, hearing what other poems are doing. And then just maybe one little step of courage of, all right, maybe I'll take 20 minutes to put pen to paper, see what comes out, and completely release the outcome. Baby steps and release the outcome.
Do you think a big part of it is letting go of that fear of failing, or what
100%.
failure may look like to you in your
100%.
mind?
Fear of starting, fear of ending, fear of failing.
Fear of succeeding, too.
Fear of succeeding, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's that inner critic, which is the loudest voice. Yeah.
That's been one of my struggles, is the fear of succeeding. Like, I'm always, what if everything goes wrong? And then I realize it's like, actually, what if everything goes right?
Yeah.
And that's a session that Mark organized around with a coach.
Emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence, yeah. Oh, man, thank you all. Mark, thank you for the extensive work. Excellent questions. Muhannad, everybody. La Raza BIPOC access. Bop, bop, bop. Oh, this is excellent.
Yeah, that was great, man.
Oh, man.